Hello and welcome to the space between ideas and welcome to my build. Everyone's talking about vibe coding. Check it out. So I got a new I got a new ear set. Well, you can't really tell, but I know that it really helps people a lot when they can hear the audio more clearly. So the setup basically is, uh, in case you're wondering, I don't know if this will work. No, I can't do it. Huh. Hmm. All right, check this out. I'll just try it a slightly different way. So in my earphones, I just had a pretty crazy situation with with my dang dog. Check this out. All right, probably that's gonna probably mess up my video. Like, you know how people are always talking about like they added some music to their video and then YouTube made them take it down. So I don't know what's gonna happen with that. Maybe it's gonna mess up my video. Yeah, my dog got in a fight with some other dog, and the store, like it's like a grocery store, and the lady at the grocery store basically feeds the thing and takes care of the thing, and it like bites people. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make a video of this and send it to the owner of this store. Like it's a chain, and you can't have a dog that's outside biting people. Anyways, then some guy jumped out and argues with me, and he's like, "Who cares? What are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna send them a message? Nobody cares." Like, yeah, small town. Anyways, what does that bring us? So I talked to Roboslav again, and his idea, he actually was the one who mentioned that I need to think about the database. Yesterday was we talked about the database, and then today we're going to talk about React. So he thought like probably you should understand how does a React app work? Because once you have the React app working, okay, here it is. So let's just jump into ChatGPT. Oh, here it is. So when I cursor, I just moved it. When I use cursor to generate the React code, where do I paste the code? I have the GitHub and Vercel accounts. I don't understand the work process moving forward. Also, cursor is not currently connected to Supabase using an API. Which step comes first so that everything is connecting properly? What should be connected before we start creating code and changes? So it's like, okay, you've already created your React app, and then your Supabase project and its tables are set up via SQL editor. So you should have the file like Supabase client.js in your SRC folder. This file imports Supabase client library and connects your Supabase product using environment variables. This connection is essential before generating code that interacts with Supabase. So then Roboslav is like, dude, it doesn't really matter if you connect your app to Supabase right now. You can create everything in Cursor first, and then after it's all set up, then you can connect it to the database. And I was like, yeah, okay, but Cursor is supposed to be smart, right? So what if Cursor talks to Supabase and then asks Supabase what kind of how the database is arranged, and then it reads the product requirements document? Wouldn't that be more helpful? And he was like, no, it doesn't really like he was kind of like, why does it matter? Like, don't you understand how to code? Like, don't you know how to create this project? And I was like, no, I don't. I have no idea what's going on. I need Cursor. I'm trying to give Cursor enough context to be able to do the work. Okay, so he says, how did we get this? Generate a React component named auth form that includes both the sign up and the login form using Superbase authentication. The component should have fields for email, password, handle, form submission, display errors if any. It should call Superbase auth sign up for setup and Superbase auth sign in with password for login. So it creates this code, and the thing is, like, where do I paste the code? So this is some Java JSX. And I was just confused. I'm like, what do I do with this code? And he said, yeah, no problem. So just jump into your cursor and then you're going to create a file. So he said, okay, so make a, well, let's go. I'll show you the other one. Where is my cursor? Here is my cursor. So he said, no problem. He said, okay, so here, so now here's saving and discussing PDR for project management. Could you save this product requirements document so that it can be referred to as we discuss the process for further development? So I put the PDR document into Cursor, and it reformats the document. I'll create the doc. So it's right here, actually. So here's the PDR markdown. So it created the document, it created the file folder, and it turned it into a markdown here. All right, so then before creating the auth form component, we should first set up, can I say something? Regarding the prompt, generate a React component named auth form that includes both sign up and login form using Superbase authentication. The component should have fields for. So I put the same thing. I said, can you create all the files needed, or should we connect Superbase API first? It said, before creating the auth form component, we should first set up the Superbase in our project. Here's the recommended order. First, we need to set up Superbase configuration and client. Then we need to create the auth form component. Finally, integrate it into our app. Let's start with the Superbase setup. You need to create this something in there. And then would you like me to proceed with creating the auth form component that we have the Superbase configuration set up, or would you prefer set up your Superbase project to get the actual credentials? I said, yes. I'll help you create the auth form component. Let's create the necessary files to implement the component. Let's first, all right. So it creates the auth form component. Let's fix interior. So this is the issue. Like right away, it's like, let's fix linter errors by updating the import path. It's like, what? We're getting errors and we just started. Now that we've created auth form component, you'll need to install the required documents. So it's installing this thing, set up your Superbase project and get actual credentials. So it's telling me I need to go get the project URL and the anon key. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing this for a second because I'll show you the anon key. So I just basically pasted it into there. I'd be happy to help guide you through the rest of the setup process if you provide your Superbase URL and anon public key. However, I should point out two important considerations. Security concerns. Sharing your Superbase credentials in a chat is generally not recommended as a security best practice, even if it's just anon key, which has limited permissions. Dang dog. See, this is the dog I'm having problems with. But he's a dog. That's what they do. They bark. Introducing a dog into your life is introducing tension. It's just the reality of it. All right, so then I paste the two things. Then it says, I'll help you set up your project with the provided Superbase credentials. Let's first create the environment file. Now let's create the Superbase client file. Now let's create the authentication context to manage the user state throughout the app. Let's update the auth form component to improve it and provide feedback for authentication. Now let's create an example page to include our auth form. Let's integrate our auth provider into the main app component so authentication state is available throughout the application. Let's update the app.js file to include our auth provider. Now let's install the necessary dependencies. Let's configure Tailwind CSS. It's just like boom, 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 boom. It's just like, I have no idea what it's doing. It's just going through whatever it wants to do. All right, let's jump back into the window. So it says, great, we now completed the setup to connect the project to Supabase. Here's a summary of what we've done. To set up Supabase configuration, we created this, and then we created this. To implement authentication, we created the auth form. We created central pages. We added routing and navigation. We did styling. Start your development server, navigate to the auth page, sign up with your email. All right, so now this is what Roboslav asked me to do. He said first explain the basic logic behind React and then consider the components needed for the project described in the PDR. Also refer to the Supabase project database structure in order to create the components needed for this project. All right, so because Cursor, I thought we should connect to Supabase first, so it can look at what is needed from the database, what is talked about in the PDR, and get a basic idea of what's going on in this project. I don't think it's that great right now at being able to understand all of that data. So it says React is a JavaScript library for building your user interfaces, particularly single-page applications. Here are the core concepts. Component-based architecture. React applications are built from reusable components that manage their own state and render UI elements. Okay, I don't even know what that means. React applications are built upon reusable components. Reusable components. Reusable components. Okay, so they're components that are reused, that manage their own state and render UI elements. Virtual DOM. React creates a lightweight copy of the actual DOM in memory, virtual DOM, and uses the differing algorithm to efficiently update only what needs to change. Unidirectional data flow. Data flow down from parent to child components through the props. I don't even know what the heck's going on. React uses JSX, a syntax extension that looks similar to HTML but allows you to write Java script directly within markup. State management components can maintain internal state that, when changed, trigger re-rendering. Hooks, functions that let you use state and other React. I don't even know what the heck this is. So it's just going components needed for Arrowhead project. Can I make this bigger? I wonder if I can make this text bigger. Based on the PDR, we need to implement the following database structures in Supabase. User table. Now, it seems like it's only talking about the PDR, so it didn't get anything from the from Supabase. User table, project table, module entries, history table, component structure, layout components, app layout, authenticated layout, module layout, authentication components, auth form, protected routes, management component, product list, project item, project menu, create project button, module components, modular nav, history item, envision module, touch base module, objective score module, brainstorm module, choose module, inline edit, confirm dialog, drag drop list, auth page, dashboard, module pages, implementation plan. Let's build the core components needed for the Arrowhead program in a structured manner. Set up the Supabase tables according to the schema above. No, don't set up the Supabase tables according to the schema above. Create project management components. Start implementation. And then it's just errors, failing to compile. I see several issues to fix. Let's do them. Let's check what we've already have. Do our component context structure first issue. So this is the issue is like, I think it went the wrong direction. Install Tailwind. I don't know. It seemed to go crazy for a while. Let's delete the app to avoid confusion. Let's proceed with more structured logic to gradually build the application. It's like the errors we're facing mainly due to this stuff. So the thing is, I don't really want it to build the components based on because it's saying that it's using that information from the product requirements document in order to create the Supabase file. All right, and then at the end, I had a problem with the sign-in page. So now what I want to know is, see, because the thing is, we can move back to a previous period. We did a lot of work yesterday, and it seemed like it was a lot of wasted time. Now, what I want to know is, did you create the components from the P product requirement document and also look at the Supabase database, or did you only look at the PDR and then or did you only look at the PDR? Let's start with that. Now, we don't really need agent to ask this question. I should clarify, I did not actually look at your Supabase database structure or create the fully components from the PDR. I only helped to debug the immediate runtime error, create simply placeholder components, basic tests, and auth form. Properly implementing the component described in PDR while creating your Supabase database, I would recommend using agent mode, which can look through your code base and Supabase configured to understand your data and schema relationships, any existing components or utility. Once we have that context, we can systematically build out components from the PDR using match your database structure, follow your existing code patterns, implement proper error handling, include appropriate loading states. So what I kind of want to do is that I want to go back. Like, it created all these files and I don't like what it did. So the question is, can I go back to the day one before all of this craziness started? And how is it going to change? Is it actually going to make the right changes to my file? Because I have the file on my computer. So, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to go, I'll help you to save the PR in a structured way. And regarding the prompt, generate read component named auth, include both sign up. Restoring this checkpoint. Undo all changes up to this checkpoint. Continue. Wow, it's deleting all those files. That's amazing. Well, it should delete more than that. It still has the Supabase connection, I think. Which means I can, yeah. Regarding this prompt, generate a requirement should have fields email handle display error. Can you still have access to Superbase? Properly implement the components described in the PDR while integrating with your Superbase. I recommend using the agent mode, which can look through your code base and Superbase configuration to understand your database schema and relationships, any existing components or utilities, environment configurations. Once we have that context, we can systematically build out the components from the PRD, ensuring that they match your database structure, follow existing. Would you like me to switch to agent mode? Okay. Would you like me to give you the credentials from Superbase so that you can show me your plan to implement the full features described in the PDR with proper Superbase integration? I need to be clear. I do not have the ability to directly access the work with Superbase credentials or any other tool. This would be security risk. This is not part of my capabilities. Rather, I would recommend to use agent mode for the tasks that require direct Superbase access, data schema inspection, environment to configure checks, existing code base. Then you can return to our conversation where I can help you with component architecture design, code implementation guidance, best practices for state management, error handling patterns, TypeScript type definition testing. I should never handle credentials or attempt to directly access external servers. Would you like to start with any implementation aspect? Okay. So I'm going to just stop sharing for a second. So I'm going to type before we start with your recommendations, I'm going to add the Superbase credentials, and then you can provide a plan. Now I'm going to switch it to agent mode. I'm going to go into the Superbase. So I still have a little bit of an issue here because there's still a lot of files. I'm not sure that those files are. Jeez, I don't know. All right, so I'm going to do the project ID. Okay, I'm going to click Data API, and I'm going to copy the URL. And copy the anon public. Before I start with your recommendations, I'm going to add the Superbase credentials and then you can provide a plan. All right, so I've given them, I should not handle or store Superbase credentials directly. This would store these credentials secretly in an environment variable. Never share their or plain text, commit them to version control, use agent mode for tasks that require Superbase access. Okay. Okay. I wish I could pause. What a weird day. I don't know. What do you think about ChatGPT? Do you think it's gotten better or worse? And what aspects is better? What aspects is worse? One thing that's worse for me is like it just like everything on the screen just disappears sometimes, like for no reason, and then I have to click settings, API. On the left sidebar, click settings and API. Here you'll see your current API keys, for example. Okay. Yeah, see, it always jumps into the PDR, the product requirements doc. Now let's create the Superbase client configuration file that uses the environment variables. I don't know how to, I wanted to look at the Superbase. Okay, it says the configuration is now support description in the PDR, include authentication, authorization, real-time updates, row level security, autosave functionality, drag and drop reordering, set up database schema in Superbase. I set up the database schema in Superbase. All right, we got a couple more minutes and then I got a meeting. So let's just take a last look at this. I set up the database schema in Superbase. Can you take a look at it? This is what I wanted to do. I see that the Superbase CLI is not installed. Let me try to approach the examine schema. I'll use this configured to carry the schema information. See, that's the whole point. Like we took all that time to create the database in Superbase. And yeah, I know that the PDR, it has like a lot of information in it, but that's it's you, if you just use the PDR, you're not going to be able to create a perfect database, or at least you're not even going to be able to you're not going to be able to create the database that I've already created in Superbase. So I'm not interested in you spending so much time looking at the PDR at this point. I want you to let's run the script to check your database schema. See, and then it's just gonna I just don't know what to do. Oh, apparently we're having an issue with the environment variables not being loaded. Let's reinstall required dependencies and try again. See, okay, so I'm still in the first step, and I'm still talking about like, okay, so remember, like I created the user interface, like the design in Mira, and then I understand the workflow, and then we created the database. That's fine. And now, and we have the PDR, but I would say the database is more important than the PDR. The PDR, it has additional information that's not in the database, but the database is the foundation. So I want you to look at the database first. And after you understand how the database works, then go look at the PDR and it'll make much more sense. It's like paint by numbers. If we use the PDR to make the structure and the numbers, then use the database to paint in, that doesn't make sense. But if you create the database first, it creates the structure and then you can do and the numbers, and then you use the PDR to paint in where what do all those pieces of the database actually mean? So it's like it jumps into the PDR first, and it's like, oh, okay, I see there's these things and that we need to do. But okay, good. But I want you to focus on the database first. So I don't know. Did we get it? Are we there? Because basically, like I could just go back to the top again. We could start again from okay, now do have to start again from the top because there's my credentials.